but I should like welcome everyone. Thank you for watching this, if you're watching the replay or if you're here now, and tell you why I'm here. And it's because I just gave this long spiel about how I love podcasting and it makes me feel less alone. And I'm so happy that I do it. But I also am really excited and happy that I do this workshop and that I've done it a couple times, because it brings more people to podcasting and it really provides a community of people. So it's 8 audio lectures for me that I recorded with an audio producer that goes through everything from coming up with a concept and naming your podcast, the technology, getting it to iTunes, interviewing. There's a whole module on that, which is my favorite part and was my favorite part to create. It's about conversation and listening, and I really love that part. And then we talk about marketing, getting it to iTunes, sharing it, monetizing it eventually. That's all in the course, these audio lessons, and then also the templates and the trackers and everything that I use, the exact email templates to reach out to guests and to sponsors, and the tracking systems, the Excel documents that we use. There's worksheets, blah, blah, blah. It's cool. Also, I interview over a dozen other podcasters, including the girls from Almost 30, including Jessica Renan, including Christy Harrison, the host of That's So Retrograde, so many people who do many different types of podcasting. And then because I wanted it to be this really well-rounded group of different sorts of podcasts. And then I also have on a vocal coach. I have on a audio engineer, a couple audio engineers actually. And then we're added to this. So this year I'm having on an attorney who's going to come in and talk about the legalities of podcasting. So I think that's really valuable and interesting. So we're adding to this workshop all the time with new resources and templates and guests. And I had on another podcast producer and host. Her name is Allison. She was actually the guest on my podcast this week, but we did a separate interview exclusively about podcasting because she's produced some really well-known shows. And so we had her on. I'm going to have my friend Emmanuel on at some point. Like, we have a whole slew of guests that we will continue to add. And that's the really cool thing about this workshop, which brings me back to my original point. I'm really all over the place, but my original point was that this is really a community and a workshop, and there's this accountability aspect of it, which I'll get to in a second, but you have lifetime access when you join the workshop. I want this to run, if any of you are familiar with a writer's workshop, the concept of workshopping as a writer is like bringing in your work and getting it critiqued by other people, by the teacher, the professor, and having deadlines. Like, those are kind of the beats that work really well in that environment. And I want this Let a Podcast Out to do that for podcasting. So you can come up with a concept, you can make a draft, you can get feedback on that draft from me, from the other people in the group. You can ideate on it and bring back another draft and then grow and then make something. And so the biggest deadline is that at the end of this workshop, each semester, we have people submit full episodes or clips of episodes, and there's a deadline. And then from there, I get to choose one of them to air on my podcast station. And I'll just say this announcement right now. I haven't said this we usually announce who won on the Facebook page. And I don't even think I've told Amanda this, but this time I had so much trouble choosing an episode to air because they were genuinely all so good. Like, I learned a lot from listening to all these episodes. I was entertained. I laughed. I cried. There's this one that, I'm just going to wait for you to hear. I couldn't choose. So we're airing a couple in this episode. It's going to be like a variety show of different episodes from this workshop that I'm going to be airing on my podcast when it comes out this week, at the end of the week. So you'll hear on Let It Out this week, but it was just really cool to see what people made and to see that people went from having an idea to actually making something and putting it out into the world, which is not an easy thing to do because of perfectionism and self-doubt and time and money and just things that make us feel stuck and make us question if we should even do something, much less share it. And I'm really proud of everyone from the last workshop that they shared. And then there's actually, I got a couple of emails from people. We have a Facebook group for the course. And I saw some people in there because I was like, we're doing another round of this. This is going to be really great. And I had some people, hi, my friend Jack is here. He's in the course and he's starting a podcast. So everyone follow Jack. He's also an amazing artist. But people were saying in the Facebook group that last round that we did this workshop, they didn't have the time to actually launch a podcast or submit something to my contest. And they were really bummed, and they were like, you know what, but this time I'm going to do it. This is the time where I'm going to actually commit to doing it, and I'm going to go through the workshop this time. Or they got like halfway through it. And so that's why I never have even though we make a deadline for the contest, I never want to make a deadline for this course, because that you can only have so much time to do it, because I think it's really valuable that we can always go back to it and we can always reapproach it, because I'm a really slow learner. I might need to go through something like 7 or 8 times to really understand it. And I want people to always have access to this information for life, or as long as there's an internet, I guess, and we have access to where we put it. So that's really cool. So you can start it, you can come back to it, you have lifetime access, which is something that I need. So I wanted everything in this course, honestly, is like what I would need when I get started with podcasting, because I started my podcast in early 2013, not knowing really what podcasts were, just knowing that I liked listening to them. And I kind of had this inkling, like, I could do that, at least with the interviewing part, but everything else overwhelmed me and scared me. The technology, getting it to iTunes, all of that. And so I needed like a podcast advisor. I needed someone to hold my hand, teach me how to do it, tell me everything, give me all the resources, and like basically do it for me. And so I had that. It was my boyfriend at the time, and he bought me a microphone, got it to iTunes, made me a website, figured out the show notes, did all of that. And without that, I wouldn't have made a podcast for sure, because I give up really easily. I'm someone who, if I can't find the remote, I just like won't watch TV. I just stop. And so I realized that that was like a really great gift, that just happened to be the phase of my life that I was in, and that I have this podcast now essentially because of that. And so I, a couple of years later, started doing podcast advising for other people, friends of mine who were like, I want to start a podcast, but I don't know where to start with that. And I was like, weirdly, I actually know now, and I could help you. So I started to do this one-on-one with businesses and people who wanted to start a podcast for fun with a friend or for their business. And some of those you can see in the testimonials on the podcasting site. Maybe Amanda can like put that in the links here. But anyway, I helped other people start podcasts, and then a little bit after that, I was like, maybe we could make a workshop of this. Maybe we could make, I kind of had an aversion to the word online course, because I just bought so many that I never used, and I felt like that was kind of a bummer. But essentially, it is an online course, but it's more than a course, I guess. I like the idea of it being a workshop. I like the idea of looking at it like a writer's workshop, but for audio, but for podcasting, because there's the community element, which like, I feel like I never really, every other time I've talked about this course or done one of these live videos, I kind of gloss over the fact that there's a community element to this, because I just didn't think it was that important. But then the last time we did it, I think it is really important. I think us talking about our creative work with each other, having support, like I'm really feeling that lately in my life in general, and everything, especially in creativity and in podcasting. Feeling alone just really sucks. So anyway, that's why there's Facebook group. That's why we do these. Oh, and we do these calls. We do these workshop calls where people can talk about their idea, what they're feeling blocked with, and then we kind of guide them through it, and that's what happens with that. I feel like I talked about a million things, but we're gonna maybe just take some questions right now. So if you have a question, type it into the chat. Amanda is here with me, my right-hand woman, and we're going to do some questions live. So should we do we have any now? Should we do some of the ones that got submitted?
Yeah, so one of the questions that have been submitted was, and actually there's different iterations of this from multiple people, but generally, how much time does it is involved in week to week for the course? And are the classes live or pre-recorded?
Okay, so there's 8 modules, or are there 9? I think there's 8.
There's 8 modules, but they're in 6 weeks.
Okay, There's 8
And
modules,
1 week's a break week.
but they're in 6 weeks. So we give you time to go through them kind of expedited. And the reasoning for that was because when I made the workshop, they're different lengths. So like the interviewing, I remember sending it to my audio producer, Clay, who's actually a guest in this, but I remember sending him the interview section of this, and he was like, wow, that one is so robust. Like compared to all the other ones, it was so much longer. So they're all a bit different sizes. So we can't really say like week 1 takes you this many hours, week 2 takes you this many hours. Again, that's why you have lifetime access to it. It's a little bit different for everyone. And it's different for each show. Like if you have an interview show, you'll take more time in that section. If you're not doing interviews at all, like you won't really take any time there. So it's a really like go at your own pace sort of situation, which is cool. As far as the community and the live aspect of it, the lectures for me are recorded, so you can like listen to those at any time, and you can listen to them on the go. They're audio, and then obviously you have the worksheets and all that, and then you have the guest lectures, which we also dose out because, like I said at the beginning, there's over a dozen, so I didn't want to overwhelm you guys with like, here's like 120 hours of content. Basically, I just said we give a couple each week, so it's dosed out to you, so it's kind of manageable, and then you can go back through it at your own pace. And then the live calls, those are at a specific time. We'll give you the dates for those. One is at the middle of November before Thanksgiving, and then the other one is in the middle of December before the holidays, before Christmas. But those are, it's cool to come live, honestly. Like I think it's a bit better if you can make it live. Like we try to make them very accessible for both time zone, or as many time zones as we can. But like my friend Jack, he's in Australia, like it might not work time zone wise, so we send a recording. So if you can't make it, no problem. And if you can't make it, like my friend Joey was in the course last time, and she's in London, and so she definitely couldn't make it because she was going to be asleep. So she submitted her question before. So you get to submit your questions before, and I stay until the very end, until every single question is answered. So don't feel like you won't get yours workshopped. Even if you can't make the calls, we'll like make sure that you do. Okay, did that answer your question?
Yeah, and just to add to that, some of the things I've been telling people is the audio lessons, just so you have an idea of how long those are with Katie. Every week, like she said, they're on the go, but they range anywhere from 15 minutes to 45 minutes. So they are like varied. And then there's usually a couple of expert interviews in every module too. But just like you said, that it's based on what people want. And then I think another thing to add in there with the live call aspect is once you're a course member, all past course members can attend any future live calls. So we actually do have people who've taken the course in the past, but then they have grown their podcast and have new questions that as their podcast evolves, and this goes in that community aspect. And so they jump on our calls for the next round of the course or submit questions, which is great. And that's what Katie was saying. It really like builds that whole aspect of, them being able to contribute to the people who are just coming in to the course new, and then also get feedback as they continue to grow and evolve. So
yeah, and that's another question that we've gotten before too. Like, should I do this podcast if I just have an idea? Should I do this podcast if I already have a podcast? And we've had people join before who already have a podcast, like in iTunes, going pretty well, but they really just want to learn more about marketing it and monetizing it and getting more ears to it. And so we help with that as well. And it's kind of great because they can be sort of like the elders in the group helping other people. They don't have to, but it really makes for a diverse group. And what I did last time, actually, like I went through the course too, and I made another podcast myself with Serena, my co-host of Spiraling, which if you haven't listened, please do. If you want to, you don't have to. But I really do like it. And I really did go through everything in this course to workshop it myself and talk about it. And we had to make a new album cover. We had to do all the things. And so I'm probably going to start another podcast, who knows, during this round of the course. So I think it really just shows you that like having lifetime access, you could potentially like start one this round and like start another one the next time, and you can keep showing up to these calls. And I think the lifetime access thing is like a really cool thing the more I'm talking about it, because it wasn't as cool when we first started, but now that we've done this a couple of times, it's hitting me.
So some questions on the live. Somebody wants to know what's the best software to edit a podcast.
Okay, so we have a whole module in there about editing specifically, but um, it really depends what works for you. So it depends. I always ask when someone's asking a question about recording equipment or specifics about podcasting, it really depends on what type of a podcast that you're making. So if you're making like a more produced show, you might need some more intricate software. I edited my show in GarageBand for a very long time, and then Amanda edited it in GarageBand for even longer after that. And then now we have an audio producer who's an actual audio engineer who uses a different program that he's really familiar with. So I would say, if you're outsourcing it, they'll use whatever's comfortable for them. If you're doing it yourself, use whatever's comfortable for you. So whatever is the most, use the low hanging fruit, whatever you have on your computer, or you can just get started with, because at the beginning, you're just getting started, you're testing things, you're piloting things. So don't overthink it, and use, we have tutorials in the course for GarageBand and for, what's the other one? Audacity.
Yeah. And there's some resources to some other new ones that are out there as well. So we have a few different resources and tutorials in there for those.
Yeah, and there's something called Anchor that like has a really low barrier to entry that we talk about a little bit, that is a good way to get started. So there's really like so many different programs that you can try to use, but I would say use what's most comfortable for you, and that will allow you to keep doing it and get better at it. And then, once your show's at a level where maybe you want to outsource it, or maybe you just, we've also had people who just know from the beginning, they're like, that's an investment I want to make, I'm going to outsource it, I don't want to learn that, I want to focus on these other things. We talk about that too, and how it's pretty easy to get your costs covered, at least through podcasting. Like I have a really good friend who is actually a guest in the course, who hosts a podcast about Grey's Anatomy with a friend, and it's totally a passion project for them, but it does really, really well. Like it's a really successful Grey's Anatomy podcast. It's called the On Call Room. You should listen to it. And Abby is a really successful photographer, and her friend works a different job as well, and they just do this for fun, but they knew they didn't want to edit it. Like that part wouldn't be fun, so they pay to have that done. And again, since it's not their job, they're not trying to make money from the podcast, but they at least didn't want to lose money on this project, on this like fun hobby. So they use something called Patreon, which we get into in the course, and they talk all about this. And they're able to fund getting it edited because they use Patreon, because they have this like really strong community. So there are ways to get things paid for like that, and not just with Patreon, and we talk about that. But I think it's just good to know going into it, like if there's one element that you just know you're not going to like, you don't have to do it, you can outsource that. And that's why I wanted many different perspectives in the guests and the guest lectures, because my podcast is super different from theirs, but I think it's valuable no matter what type of podcast that you're starting, to see all the different ways you can do it on the back end. Okay.
Yeah, and a follow-up question to that, what products do you recommend one buy for recording specifically?
We have a list of things in the course for this too, and we can email anyone who like actually wants that PDF. We can let you know and get that to you. But I use a Zoom H4n recorder. That's like the one that I now plug two microphones into. It's really portable, and if you're recording in person, I think that that's really great. And then I recorded for a really long time just on my computer with headphones, and like that worked for a while. I use the Yeti mic, the blue Yeti mic, and that's what I still sometimes use too. It plugs into a USB. So there's so much equipment that you can buy now, and a lot of it's really affordable. So I would say, depending on where you are, start with the affordable model. The Yeti Snowball mic is a good one, and we can send out like a resource list to all of this. But start out with something that's pretty simple and doesn't cost a lot of money, I would say. And then, see how you're doing, making sure you're using it. Maybe that's like all you need and you don't need to upgrade. And then you can decide you want to upgrade a bit later. But I again, like low barrier to entry with podcasting. Like I really like that it's not this, you know what I mean? Like I don't have to not that I did today, but I don't have to think about my appearance. I don't have to think about like the lighting. I don't have to think about any of that anytime I record ever. Like, and even the sound, like it can be imperfect. And again, that's something that I haven't really said yet, but this podcast course is not for someone who's like trying to work at This American Life or NPR. Like, this is what I call DIY podcasting. So podcasting alongside a full-time job or as a hobby. I am not professional in this in any way, but I have a great time doing it, and it's allowed me to sustain itself and some of my other projects, and it's allowed my other projects to be built up. So, and that's another thing I wanted to say too, like, we've had in the course teachers, we've had professors, we've had writers, we've had people who are like coaches, we've had people who have businesses, we've had a principal of a school, we've had someone,
yeah,
mom,
everything.
yeah, I mean, we've had a really, which I'm really proud of, like a very diverse group of people in this podcast workshop. And also too, we'll link to there's a scholarship, because I really want to prioritize diversity in this course. So we have for LGBTQ plus and people of color, we prioritize them, and it's a needs-based scholarship. So we have that, and we add people to the course through that as well. So we want it to be accessible. We like made the prices accessible as we possibly could. And anyway, that's what's happening with that. Okay, more questions, because I think it kicks us off in an hour and we're getting close.
Yeah. Top 3 things you wish you knew when you started your podcast.
Oh, that's such a hard question. Top 3 things I wish I would have known. I wish I would have known that I wish I would have known how great it was going to be, actually. I mean, it was a nice thing to be surprised by, I guess, but it would have been cool to know that, like, I would still be doing it almost 10 years later, and how different it would have become. Like, that, it just would have been interesting to know, to like predict the future, I guess. I would have wanted to know how, there's this thing called new and noteworthy, and you can try to get into that when you start. And like, we talk about that a little bit, of just, starting off having some in the bank, and not feeling like you have to be on a deadline every week to put it out. And we talk about that in the course, of kind of like how to make this work for you and not be overwhelming. And at the beginning, it was pretty overwhelming to me. But I always say, like, stop when things aren't feeling good. So I've gone through phases of, taking breaks, doing seasons. And that's something I wish I would have known when I started, so I didn't overwhelm myself and like burn myself out. And then the third thing I guess I would have wanted to know, I don't know, I guess just how this medium like allows people to connect, really. What conversation can do when you really listen and you stop thinking about what the other person's going to say. And how I've talked about this a lot, but how conversation really has become a meditation for me. It's something that there's very few moments in your life when you're off your phone, you're not in a public place, so you're distracted by the world around you, and you're just talking to someone. And I can't lose my train of thought and start thinking about the future or the past. I have to be really present, because I'll sound silly if I zone out, and it'll make editing more complicated. So I really am present during those interviews, and that has helped me far outside of podcasting. Like, that's helped me be a person. That's helped me be able to have conversations with people, with new people. It's allowed me to learn how to talk to people in the world a lot better than I did before I started this podcast. I feel like I can have a conversation with anyone as a result of this. So those are 3 kind of all over the place things that I wish I would have known, but we're also welcome surprises. What else have we
Cool. Let's see. One kind of unique question. How do you push yourself to make time for your podcast, or how do you stay consistent with it when it is a side project?
My friend Ray just joined. Hi, Ray. Her husband produced this workshop, and she's my very good friend, and I miss her so much. How do I stay consistent? See, I obviously get very distracted all the time. I think you treat it for now, for me, I don't have a full-time job on the side of it, but I have a lot of other things on the side of it still. Um, and I think it's just accountability. And it's also just being nice to yourself of maybe an episode doesn't come out that week, but that's better than putting out like a half-assed episode. Um, or maybe you look at it the other perspective, which is something I've talked about before, of looking at it like a newspaper, where it's like every week you put something out, and some of them you're going to like hit a home run with, and other times it's going to not be so great. But statistically, if you keep doing it, you're bound to have a home run. I think that's, yeah, home runs are good. You're bound to like, I was going to say strikeout, but that's bad. You're bound to have a good one, right? If you keep putting out content. So you can really look at it from both perspectives of like, take your time, put something out when you're ready, or you can kind of push yourself to just have a deadline and be like, okay, I said every Thursday, I'm going to do every Thursday. I think two ways to go with that are to know what your brain is like. So I'm not a perfectionist. I put things out with spelling errors all the time. And I am someone who can just make a lot of things and doesn't really, I'm overthinking enough of like conversations with people and like if I'm okay, but I don't really overthink a lot of the content that I put out. And so I've been able to make 300 podcast episodes and not overthink it, even though they're far, far from perfect. But I know a lot of people who aren't that way, who don't have the like, fuck it, let's put it out mentality, who are just like holding on to things and unsure and fearful. And I could get that way, and I understand that school of thought. So I think you have to understand which camp you fall into. And if you're someone like me who just can put stuff out and not overthink it, great. Then maybe you need to slow yourself down. Maybe you need to, because I need to do this too. Give yourself seasons and say, okay, I'm going to put out 8 episodes and I'm going to stop. And I'm going to go into a hole and I'm going to try to improve and create content and get more inspired and learn new skills and get better, and then put out more quality instead of quantity. Or if you're on the other side of things, you could say every Thursday, for you give yourself a set amount of time, or again, a season, but just say like, I'm committing to doing it every week for this amount of time. And it doesn't have to be forever, but just, there's a lot of talk of like a challenge, right? Like a 100-day challenge, or, you could kind of do that for yourself of like, I'm going to set this up and I'm going to put this out for at least this amount of time, and then I can reassess after that.
Awesome. And yeah, with that, I think the community aspect is like that's helpful. Like I've even seen somebody in the group, like a couple things, like when you were saying people want to be perfectionists, like they can even put it into the group and then get the feedback from the group, which gets them more validation, I guess, in some ways. And then I've even seen people in the group, just, it's nice to have the group to celebrate your wins. Like somebody recently posted in the group, that they had like over 1,000 downloads from like the last course season. So already they've been out for just a couple months and had a 1,000 downloads. So it's nice to have that too in the community, like we were talking about earlier, where you can like celebrate those like wins as you continue to go forward. And that keeps you inspired. I think it helps the people.
The wins and also the frustrations too, because I think there's so many frustrations. Like I mean, Amanda knows better than anybody. Like I get so many frustrations of like, this has changed and I don't know what's happening with this. Or, we had like a situation happen where like our podcast got pulled down from iTunes and I didn't know what was happening. And like, that's the kind of stuff that you can like post in the group, and somebody might have experienced the same thing, or you can at least talk about that, what you're feeling, or just in a more, in a less specific way of, I'm just feeling really stuck, or I don't know why I'm dragging my feet on this project. And I think that's a great way to connect with other people feeling the same way, and helps you to like keep going after that.
Cool. One more that's like specific to the course is, if I'm not planning on launching a podcast until next year in 2020, do you recommend I take this course now?
Yeah, I would say buy it now, because we're not going to be doing it until you have lifetime access, which we've like talked about at length. So you could literally start it on January 1st if you wanted to, and that would be totally fine. But I would say maybe like pop in and out of it right now, and you can like really dive into it in 2020. Or you could fully do the course now and like hit the ground running in 2020 and just like press play. Honestly, you really won't if you go through it at the exact time that you do it, you'll be like right up to the new year by the time you finish anyway, giving yourself like a little buffer for the holidays. So like that would be perfect if you wanted to launch in the new year, to do it now. And then also the other thing, we're not going to launch this again. Like you won't be able to sign up again until like far into the new year, like at least this late spring. So I would just join it now because you have lifetime access, and unless you want to start it like next summer, then maybe you could wait. But even then, if you want, you can join now because again, lifetime access. So you can do this really whenever you want. That was neat.
Is there anything else you wanted to cover before we are getting into like the last few minutes before the Instagram will kick us off?
Yeah, I have like no concept of how long we've been on here even. I don't know. I guess I really am excited by the fact that we update this course and that we've now done it so many times, so people have more. I think it gets better the more we do it because we're learning about what people need. You have access to those other group calls, so you're able to hear us like workshop other people's podcasts and see where they are now. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just happy it exists. What do you think, Amanda? What else do people need to know about, or like what do we always talk about in terms of like questions we get about this?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of them. The community, the access to you with the calls is a big one. And the timing of how, like the time commitment. And it's, I guess with that too, the time commitment, that seems to be a really big question that we get a lot. Another thing to add in there is we have adjusted it. We've run this course 5 times, like you said, I think 5 or 6 times. And we've actually adjusted the course based on the feedback we get from the students. And we ask the students every single course we run, like how we can improve it. So we've really, you've really worked to make it very manageable and like shuffled things in a way that's that people in the last couple courses and rounds felt very comfortable with, like the time management aspect of it. So I think that's important to add. Yeah, let me grab one more question.
And you get access to Amanda because she's on the calls too.
Yeah. Hi.
And she, like, a lot of questions, if I don't know them, she'll know them.
Yeah.
So I phone a friend.
Or I'll find them. Yeah, exactly.
If you don't know them, we will figure it out. And that's another thing about this course too. I've said this a lot. It's like, look, everything I teach you in this course, you could Google. Like you could, right now, you could figure it out for free. You could find it. It's very accessible information. But the reason why I made this course is because I'm someone who's really bad at Googling things. Like I don't figure things out well myself. Like I said, a lot of hand holding, need a lot of help, need a lot of support, need to feel like I'm basically like cozy and in the womb at all times, And so this is like being in the womb of a we're like podcast doulas over here, We're like keeping you very safe and cozy, giving you bite-sized things to do every single week, but take it at your own pace. A week could be a month for you or 2 weeks for you. And you can tap in and out at any time that you like. And then it's really just about like nurturing something and making sure you put it into the world in like the safest, coziest way with all the support and love behind you, So that's this course at the most woo-woo witchy level.
Awesome. This last question then, I think this is like a perfect last question. How do I overcome the fear of putting myself out there? Or how do you overcome the fear of putting yourself out there?
Well, you know the answer to that, Amanda. I don't have that fear. I'm an only child that just came out of the womb wanting to be seen and loved. And then I also have a lot of anxiety. I made a whole podcast about. But really, though, I really don't have the fear of being seen and like putting myself out there. But I know a lot of people do. And so I can at least tell you what has helped me. So it's thinking in a way of kind of giving yourself those markers of like, I'm going to do this for 6 weeks. I'm going to record something. I'm going to put it out there. I do that often with Instagram posts. Somebody told me this is not my line, but like post and ghost. So like you're not sitting there like waiting to see what type of reaction that it gets. You're just posting it and moving on with your life. And I think that's a really good way to look at this with podcasting of like, I'm going to make something that I feel really proud of, that I feel really comfortable in, and then I'm not going to think about it. And what happens to it after that, I can't control. So you might as well only think about the parts of it that you can control. My mom always said this thing to me, concern yourself with you. Like all you can focus on is the parts of it that you're making. So if you make something that you're really proud of, that you like, and you share that, what happens to it next is really not even your concern. So if you have a fear of putting yourself out there, I would say, like I said, give yourself a deadline to practice doing it, because I think practice will help, but also not forcing yourself, like giving yourself little bite-sized ways to put yourself out there. So maybe it's like raising your hand in a meeting, or going to the party that you like don't really know anyone at and asking someone a question. And so like just doing little pieces of it, and then when you do the podcast, I think it'll feel less scary because you've kind of built up that muscle. It's a muscle like anything else. And I made that big joke about how like I came out of the womb like wanting to do musical theater, and there's like truth to that. I do think there are different personalities. Like my friend Carolina asked me recently, like, who, if we were like at a concert, and she was like, if you were going to be in a band, like who would you want to be up there? And I was like, oh, obviously the singer. And she was like, that's so funny. She's like, I'd want to be like the bass player, the drummer, like we all have different like thresholds for wanting to be seen and comfortability at those levels. And I think if you're someone who, wants to be the drummer or wants to be like more behind the scenes, that's okay too. And I think it's just figuring out, really getting honest of like, what is it about this that you want to, why are you doing this? Is it to highlight other people's stories? And like, maybe you're interviewing and it's not as much about you. I think there's a lot of me in my podcast. My podcast is kind of like a one woman audio journal that happens to have other guests. Like I take like a Mark Maron model, or like like a lot of comedians do. And that's what I've done, and that's what I do. And spiraling is also very much me focused. It's about me and Serena, and different, and we're talking about our experience with this mental illness situation. But there'll be other projects that I do that will be very much about other people that I'll take less of a role in. And there's so many projects that we've workshopped with Let a Podcast Out, and just that I know of in general, that aren't about the host at all. So if you're more comfortable not making it about you, then that's okay. But if it's a genuine fear and you're just scared of what people will think, I think it's just a matter of if you want to do it, you should do it. Even if you're afraid, you should try, because I think that there's value to that. And I think holding yourself back because you're afraid of what people think is just a bummer. And I want you to be able to, if you want to share your podcast with someone, I think sharing creative projects is really important, because like I've talked about this before, but something I loved got canceled off of the television. I was so bummed. And you never know who you're disappointing. You know what I mean? Like who loves the weird thing that you made, or the niche thing that you made. Like one of my favorite podcasts got canceled this year too. And it's like, it's okay. There's a million out there, but you never know who you could be that for. Like, yes, there are a million podcasts, but not yours. And somebody's going to be picking up what you're putting down. You know what I mean? And it's probably me. And I just think the more the merrier. Like, yes, it's saturated. Yes, there's a lot out there, but it's not leaving an environmental footprint. It's not doing any harm in any way for you to put yourself out there and share a podcast. If someone doesn't like it or doesn't like you, they'll turn you off. You know what I mean? Like there's no reason for you to not do it. That's what I think. And if it's genuinely just a fear of being seen, and a fear of, I would ask yourself, like, do a journaling exercise about this. Like, where's the fear coming from? Is it a fear of being judged? Is it a fear of being imperfect? Is it a fear of, you I'm not sure. Is it a fear of like something that happened to you in the past? Like just really get honest about that, and then try to push yourself like beyond that fear, but also take it slow. And if you don't want to do it right away, that's okay. Just percolate on the idea. Does that answer the question, Amanda?
Yeah, I think it more than answers it. I think it's good. So
What else
uh,
have we? Anything
cool.
else?
I think that's like a good one to wrap up on. And then I think the final thing we just want to share with people is hello. Katie's offered a very lovely gift for the Instagram Live chat people here. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, but I'll need help, but I'll try. We're doing a special discount for everyone here. And I'm not exactly sure how much it is, but Amanda's going to tell me, but a special discount for everyone. How much are they?
65.
$65 off. That's a little bit under 100,
With the
a little
code.
bit more than 50. And it's a bunch. So thanks for being here. And if you want to use, what's the code for that?
Let it out 65. I'll put it right here.
Let it out 65.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. This was really fun. I was in a weird mood and ate a lot of almond butter before this. So I hope you guys have a really great day. I'm actually recording after this with the winner of the podcast contest from last semester. We're going to do a little mini interview, and you'll get to hear it on Friday on my podcast. But thank you so much for listening and being here in the middle of the day. I hope you guys are having a good day. And thank you.
Yeah, if people have questions, they can email or DM or whatever. Yeah.
Yes. Email is best. Why don't you email me, katie@katiedelebout.com, or info@katiedelebout.com. We'll get back to you very quickly. I think that's all we've got, right?
That's it. Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. All right. Love you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.